Alrighty, everybody. Welcome to the Malibash Media Show. Today, I'm so excited. We have esteemed guest Kimberly on with us today. She is a CSA casting director, executive producer, Butterfly Films, Wonder Wheel Entertainment. She has been in the business for many years and has got some really great keys and wisdom to share with us today. So, Kimberly, I'm really excited to have you here with us. Thank you for being.
I am happy to be here. I love sharing all the great stories with the next gen.
Yes, we were just talking about, the next tech and all that good stuff, trying to keep up with all that great things, right? So, so yes, great to have you here. And I kind of wanted to ask a little bit of, what got you started in the business, your background, how you got to be a CSA casting director, what that entails, and tell us a little bit about your movie that you're doing now. I know it's like a Christmas movie, so there's a lot of excitement there, and maybe some good things of like we'll start there and then we'll just continue on. But I wanted to ask later, what are some things that you look for as a casting director? What are things that turn completely, it's kind of like an interview process, right? What are things that make you be like, no to that person? Or, yeah, that person's got some potential. So,
Well, it is so
yeah.
funny your question about, what drew me to this career. And it's funny, it's how far do I dial it back? Do I dial it to the accidental interview, or do I even dial it back to seeing my first Broadway show in New York? Because I grew up in Connecticut. The big things, my family, both of my parents were originally from Arkansas. So I remember as a young teen going to see my first Broadway show and thinking, wow, what a cool job those people have. Like, an important part of those people. Like, who are those people? Because if you go over to a small town, you don't really know those people. So I hadn't seen theater before, but seeing that Broadway show, my mother was very disappointed because it wasn't a huge pomp and circumstance show. So my first show was Chorus Line. But I loved that my first show was Chorus Line because it really chronicles, what it's like as an actor to get into the business, to be auditioning, and then the big showing number in the end. So that was a first imprint, which I do recall thinking, what a cool job those people have. And then I then decide to change my major in college to theater. I'd been studying education, but after my year in Edinburgh, Scotland, studying, a friend of mine said, because she had graduated and was teaching when I went back for my second term, she said, if you don't teach right away in your 20s, I wouldn't. So then I went back to college, started my first year at American University, traveled in international educational performance group Up With People. And after that year going back to college, I thought, she is absolutely right. I cannot be stuck in some small town somewhere, USA, being a teacher in my 20s. I'll just do that when I'm 40. So I then did change my major in college from education to theater. Thank heavens, and my lovely, lovely professor, Gail, whom I'm still in touch with today. She's just an inspiration in my life. She said, I will allow you to transfer from education to theater, but everyone in this department must know you. So it was saying that I really had to dial it up and make sure I was involved in everything I needed to be involved in. And in the end, it was very funny because I think people knew me more in the department than some other people who'd been there, for 4 years, because I really made sure I was showing up at everything and doing as much as I could do and learning as much as I could learn, because I still wanted to graduate on time. Because on time for me, as we've just noted, was a year in Scotland and a year in Up With People. So I was already on the 6 years in school plan. So I really wanted to finish just so I could go get out in the world and actually do something. And it was, again, back to American University. So as we're dialing it up to how I got involved in my amazing job, was that a friend was a master's student at American University, and she interviewed for a job in Washington, D.C. to be a casting director. And because she had her master's, she said, they don't pay very much, so why don't you interview in case I don't want the job? Well, as luck would have it, they didn't actually offer the job. They offered me the job. And so this was, again, an accidental interview that then turned into this career that I love, because I loved acting, but I really focused on directing in college because I just found that more intriguing for me personally, because I've always loved design. So I love the costume design. I love the set design and love the lighting design and all of these other design areas in addition to the craft of acting. So it just made absolute sense for me to be finding ways to be directing in college as opposed to necessarily acting as much. So then when I found this casting director job, it was the best of both worlds. I really got to hone all these crafts I learned as an actor, but then all of the things from directing, and that's what I got to do every day was, working with talent and getting talent in for auditions and then auditioning them and having that great opportunity back in the day, pre-Zoom, pre-pandemic, you were with the actors. So you were really having firsthand experiences to change people's performances and help them get jobs. So that's how I got into it, totally by accident, but fell in love with it very quickly. And so that going back to teaching when I was 40 still has not happened. And I'm well beyond 40.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That is so awesome. I think it's great that it was an accidental interview that got it. I mean, I guess your friend was okay with not getting it, but I think that's fantastic. Like you were meant to get into this position, which is pretty awesome. And
Yeah, I don't think there is any accidents in the world. And it just was a perfect and lovely job, which was just, again, part of the trajectory as you go through life. Each one of these is some sort of a stepping stone or information for another job or project or something that you'll be working on. Because it all
yeah,
has more tools in the tool belt.
right, exactly. What was the interview like for this? I mean, was it just kind of the same interview that would you normally would go through?
Funny you would ask. No, the other day and told this story, and I just relive it all the time, and it's so humorous. So most people's "Oh, how did you get your job?" is pretty standard and quite as comical as mine. And you, because my first time meeting you, I got to meet your daughter as well, so you'll appreciate the story as a mom. Because I started this job long before cell phones, and as I mentioned, it was an accidental interview. And for some reason, I needed to be picking up my mom and my best friend Troy's mom were in Atlantic City. Now, I have no idea why they're in Atlantic City, but heading back north to get home to Connecticut, because I was dropping my youngest sister off to go to college in Washington, D.C., I needed to pick them up in Atlantic City. They must have been doing some little whatever it was as an overnight or something, but I'm meant to be picking them up. So I talked to my mom in the morning to let her know, because again, this is old school landline. You could only call people from certain locations to give them whereabouts. So I called to let her know I got this job interview and I didn't exactly know what time I was going to be there. So she was, of course, a little short like you would be because, well, how long are you going to leave me waiting here? And so as I arrived to my interview, which I am now lost and late because I got lost in Washington, D.C. on all the crazy streets here. And so then by the time I park, because there's northeast, southeast, northwest, southwest. So I parked in the wrong quadrant and I had to walk very far to get to my interview. Arrived, only to have the lovely receptionist say, after me introducing myself, "Oh, so nice to meet you. Your mom has called 3 times."
Not what you want to hear. It's like your mom coming to school.
Mom has called 3 times. I thought, okay, great, thank you so much. You can't say much because if you're not saying nice things about your mom in a job interview, you're so not getting hired.
Yeah, that's so true.
Then I go sit down on my interview with one of the two owners, and I only had 2 resumes with me because I wasn't even planning on a job interview. And again, this is old school. People did not have printers at home. You had to rely on your parents for doing all typing and printing and these things. So my father gave me 2 copies of my resume before I left. Center justified name, left justified name. So I had given one away in the morning, an American, to the recruiting office saying, "Oh, yeah, sure. If I move back to the area, I'd happily recruit, do the recruiting tours." So I only had one left. And of course, they asked me for 2 when they asked for my resume. "How do you have 2?" Because there was 2 partners from the company. And I said, "Oh, no, I'm so sorry. I only have one." So I'm like, okay, now I've lost. I'm late. I have one resume. My mother has called 3 times. So of course, most people by now would be crumbling in an
Yes.
interview. But I knew from acting class, showtime.
Wow, good for you. Oh my gosh. I'd be a
On
mess.
and I tell theater, I travel in a performance group, I've done all these things, which makes me, perfect fit for the job. The phone rings. And she said, "It's been so busy this morning. Laura's been crazy." Yeah, because she was answering calls from my mom all morning. She said, "Let me take the phone. I'll be right with you." And I was like, "Okay, certainly." So I just sat patiently waiting. And then she said, "Okay, great. One moment." And she put the phone down and turned to me and said, "Your mother is on the phone."
Oh my goodness, your
So
mother.
go across and pick up a call from my mom. And I literally went bending over, getting closer to the phone, thinking maybe that would get her off the phone. It was like a scene
Yep.
in a movie. And so I thought when I left, after all of this, I thought these people are never calling me. Never, 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 never. Well, shockingly, I did get a call and they wanted me to start working next week. And so
Wow.
that was
That's
of my career. And I was there for 3.5 years. So,
wow, that's
and then
amazing.
Yeah, it was a very funny story. But my mother had to work very hard. She realizes, again, pre cell phones, she had to remember where I was interviewing. She had to call information. For all the young viewers, you used to be able to dial 411 and you could get telephone numbers of people. I don't even know if you can still do that anymore, but who would? Because you can Google a number. But she had information and go to a payphone with coins to actually call to say, be safe on your drive. Just get here when you get here. Because she felt bad that, God forbid, that was the last words that she had had, is how long you're going to leave us waiting here. So it was a very funny interview process. And I feel confident that the only reason I got the job is because I did not crack under pressure. I was Showtime the whole time. And it's a very stressful business, the film business. There's always changes. It's fast paced. You can't really be beholden to a schedule because the only constant
It's
is
so true.
change. So all of that, they just thought she'll survive
Okay.
here, and I and here I am still surviving with all the crazy. But it's fun. A little
Oh,
bit
that's
crazy.
so amazing. Yes, all that probably really paid into it. Your mom is a part of the success story, maybe? I love
Yeah,
it.
so I just rolled with
Wow,
it.
that's fantastic. Because I know a lot of people, can barely go to a regular interview, and then when you have to add in the fact that it's a more of a yeah, it's a fast pace. You need to be quick on your feet, and you need to think quick, and you need to have your face all ready and put together and be in that mindset. It's completely difficult. Yes. So that's pretty high praise. Um, Tell me a little bit about, you're working on a movie right now as executive producer, so congratulations on that. Tell us a little bit about that, and if you can, that is.
Oh no, I absolutely can. I am happy to tell people about it. So there's a couple of different projects I'm working on, and what had transitioned over the years because I'm still casting, which is definitely my first love in the business. But I quickly, in helping independent filmmakers who were working on all of these large films, started producing for them because they needed help. And that help, having learned so much from producers on these huge films that I got started on in Washington, D.C. I was then casting and producing these films and was always really helping out the directors because obviously I'd had this director background. And so over the years, I've also produced shorts and features and then transitioned into. So I keep arranging all these great people I know for these other directors. How about I just do that for myself? That's really what my first love was in college. But in that world of you have to see it to be it, which is why I really love to share these stories, and then particularly with women to help them level up and do jobs they want to do, because you do have to see it to be it. So in these early days of my career, I met some of the biggest directors, Oscar winners, but who would think then when you meet Jim Cameron, Alan Pakula, Sidney Pollack, Jonathan Demme, all these
Wow.
amazing directors, would you, as a 26-year-old girl, oh, well, I can be a film director too? Because there was just no women doing it. Now there was female costume designers, female production designers, but not directors. So then I just became this producer for all of these other folks to see success with it. And it was only 4 years ago that I started thinking, well, so why don't I do this for myself? If I'm doing it for all these other people and I'm there to catch any balls they might drop, well, I know I'm not going to drop any balls as a director. So let me just surround myself with some great people. And then as you start to turn your energy in that direction, some great scripts came my way. And then in a row, 3 Christmas movies came my way, which was an important subject matter because huge Christmas family. Grew up with a huge Christmas family. You hear the stories about my mom. Obviously, she likes hoopla and holidays. And so we were a big Christmas family. And then unfortunately, suddenly, my father had a heart attack at 63 and so it was disappointing once Christmas started rolling around because we were such a Christmas family. So I grew to not really love Christmas. But I'd still show up and I'd wear my red dress and my little star pins and do whatever you needed to do for the holidays, but I didn't love it as much as I used to because it was just a big missing piece. So the third film that fell on my desk that was another Christmas movie had a woman and daughter who had lost their father and husband. So this lovely, charming story that was a bit analogous to my story was the tradition of the little girl and her dad putting a star on the Christmas tree. Like she would lift up, put the star on the tree, put the star on the tree. And after he passed away, they did have a guy who came in and was really helping them save this in the storyline. And then she got a message from her dad, a little message from above that said, you can ask Gary to have you put the star on the tree. So for me, making the movie is now putting the star on the tree again. And I fell in love with this great story and that it had this lovely, just personal piece to it as well. So that being said, because I'm a female director, you want to make sure as a female director you're profitable. So I then also went into now business strategy for this holiday movie. And the original title we weren't necessarily in love with because I'm working with a boutique distributor called Cohen Inc. And she said, I don't really love the title. And I said, well, personally, I don't really love the title either. But it's that fast paced thinking and being creative on cue that when she didn't like the title, I said, well, how about Christmas in New England? And she said, I love it. So we tried to come up with some other subject, titles, never came to fruition because she just loved that one, which I loved it too. I grew up in New England. I love New England. But then I started thinking, well, that's a very open ended title. So I then wrote her a little note and I said, well, Christmas in New England is a very, open-ended title. That feels like a series. Maybe we can keep making movies till Ruby goes to Dartmouth. Because in the film, Ruby is only 8 years old. And if we kept making a series of films, we could keep doing it till she went off to college. And so that being said, she writes back and said, oh, I love it. I love where you're going with this. So then I started doing research. She has connections with Hallmark, and they do trilogies of films as long as it carry over characters. So I thought, well, great. I am not going to show up as a female director with one movie and be seen as a one-hit wonder. I'm going to show up with a trilogy of holiday movies England banner. So it was still very creative, but also very strategic as a female director as far as a trilogy was concerned, and also with the Christmas films because they are evergreen. So I was now going to have an opportunity that this would be a film that could sell over and over again. It wasn't something people would watch again and again, but Christmas comes every year, and so do the cavalry of Christmas films. So it was very strategic, very creative, and very personal all at the same time. So I love that piece of it. And so we do see Ruby as a young girl in the first script. In the second script, she's now a teenager because I thought it was very important to do a great teen story where women were getting along and supporting each other because most of the teen movies, there's mean teens as opposed to teens who get along. And then, of course, that nice guy who showed up in the first movie and was helping out Ruby and her mom, that Bells Will Be Ringing is the title of the second film. So you can see where that's going.
Oh, yeah, that's so cool. I love that.
So we definitely have romance that's going into it. We have Christmas. We have great music. Working on holiday albums that will, also be companions to those projects as well. And where the third one is going in the trilogy, I haven't decided yet. So we're still brainstorming to see, what's the next piece of a story. Does she go to college, or do we fast forward to her getting married? So I haven't really decided yet what the third in the trilogy will be. But it's great. And they're just really wonderful, feel-good stories that you're finding love after loss in the first one with the mom, and that we're following the unlikely leader because the whole storyline follows the ideas that Ruby is bringing for them to actually save the inn. So we're going on a magical scavenger hunt that if they build this magical snowman, they will be able to save the inn from being demolished. And it's a historic inn. So everybody in town is following the little girl, and miraculously, of course, they save the inn. So it's really.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, how far out do you like to plan? I mean, no, planning doesn't really, it's not a thing, right? But, very loose planning. Planning to change is, I guess, the best word, like what you
Well,
said.
the planning is paramount. When it actually happens is that part you're talking about that's very uncertain. So it's all about, much like in real estate, people say location, location, location. Well, in film production, it's pre-production, pre-production, pre-production. So the more planning you do before you're going to actually, just roll into physical production, the better, because you've got more time to procure everything you're looking for, to work on deals. And independent films, a really good producer is going to be somebody who is actually working all of the different angles, meeting people who, instead of on a large film, they might charge a lot of money for a location. They may give it to you for very cheap or even free because they're supporting, what you're doing. So, for example, with the Christmas in New England films, I am going home to my hometown, which is Watertown, Connecticut, and the county is where all of the locations I found. So it's Litchfield County. And of course, everybody was just excited to help. That, yes, a lot of films are shot in Connecticut, particularly Christmas films, but I actually grew up there, so now I'm coming back to tell a story. So people have been very generous with their time and with what they're offering to pull into it. So what would be a very expensive movie, we're making for much less because of it.
Yes, absolutely. And that's I've heard, to be creative, especially for independent films before you're getting to that distribution and you're getting that payout and everything. It it's helpful to network, and learn how to kind of fall back on people that would be really excited to help you out for a little bit less, and
Well, it's building relationships, and you can't buy. And you have to have just been kind. So, for example, one of the locations is a lovely restaurant that's on in my hometown. There's a cute little golf course called Crestbrook, so it's a local public golf course. But there is a restaurant actually on the course, and as it turns out, a guy who played football when I was a cheerleader in high school owns the restaurant. So, of course, he was very generous to say, "Please come here. What else can we do for you?" And I said, "Well, we do need, to be feeding the crew while we're here all day." So it's just from being nice
Yeah.
in high school. Like, who would have thought that I would have come back to town all these years later and needed to ask a favor of someone? So I think just being kind and generous with everything you do in life will always serve you well when you need something later and you don't know when that's going to be. So, for example, with the album that I mentioned, I did reach out to a music producer that I met many, many years ago. And so we were just getting reacquainted with everything that was happening with the project, came on to help with the albums. But then as he became more familiar with everything that was happening, that the two Christmas films, then I shared with him another jazz movie called Metronome that I'm working on. I thought, well, I mean, he's a former musician and music producer. Maybe he'll like it. So in the end, he ended up enjoying all of them, was really eager to help out and get behind me as a director. And he's now come on to be the executive producer and help me really facilitate, a bigger distributor and still working with my former distributor, or not former distributor, but, distributor that I was working on with the holiday films to move all of it forward. So it's all these relationships that I built over time, just out of kindness and goodwill, that everybody's, really stepping up to the plate to help out.
That's really amazing. And when it comes to pitching for the distribution centers, what is a best practice that you have learned along the way? I mean, obviously knowing people and being kind, because when you're on set, you never know if the person that's giving you water is going to be the next person that's running is the next AD or is the next executive producer. And so, what is that? What have you found that's been successful as far as?
Well, I think you do have to cross all your T's and dot all your I's and really do homework so that all of your pitch materials are there and all of that comes from a really solid script. I do find a lot of first time filmmakers or first time writers or even producers that you'll find a great property and the idea and essence of something fabulous is there, but maybe the script isn't perfect in the dialogue area. Maybe there's not interesting enough arcs for the characters or a strong through line to the story and theme that is going to engage all audiences. So you can't just pick a genre and just have a lot of dialogue on a page and think that's going to be what people are going to sink their teeth into. It's, some overarching theme of, again, in Christmas in New England, Ruby's Magical Snowman, that there is love after loss with the mom. So we're really happy for her when she meets this guy who helps out, because people do lose their partners. And what do they do? And how do they find new people when they're raising a child? And then to lose a parent when you're young and see that also young people have things to offer. So they're really queuing in on the advice that the little girl is giving. So sometimes we should look to the unlikely leader to be the leader. That's a theme that anybody can dive into. If you're a young person and you see that she was inspired to be giving advice to elder people and that they listen to her, that will inspire young people to say, well, maybe I should speak up. And that if you're feeling loss after you lost a partner, that now you see that, oh, there is hope for me. So if you find themes like that and really dig into them, it's emotional and psychological connections to characters are what keep us going to movies. Because if it wasn't to see it live like that, you could just stay home and read the book. So you really have to dive into the psychological and emotional so that the actors and directors have something to sink their teeth into and put that story on screen for people to watch and really fall in love with and want to watch again and again and again because they just love the characters
Yeah,
around.
exactly.
So that's the foundation of it all. But really getting all of those pitch materials together, knowing who you're pitching to, knowing what the film or series is suitable for. I mean, if something is more of an HBO than your network, ABC, CBS, NBC, you need to know the differences there. So you don't want to go pitch something to CBS if it really is a little more out of bounds and pushing the envelope like an HBO show. So you have to know your property so that you are pitching it to all the right people. And just because people have money doesn't mean they're going to invest in film. So I think that sometimes is a misnomer. Oh, they have money, they'll invest. Well, no, because maybe they want to invest their fortune in education or in real estate and maybe not in a risky, but potentially profitable project like a
Yeah,
film.
absolutely. Now I have two questions for you, but since we're kind of in that realm anyways with what the characters behind what you're pitching, what do you look for when you're casting? What is some things, obviously you want somebody that's going to fit the gig, so to speak, right? But what do you look for? What are some things that you love about when people cast with you, or some people they're just like, okay, you need to go someplace else. You're
Well, I think from that very first moment when people are introducing themselves, which often starts outside of the room with one of your assistants. So, again, going back to the being kind to people around you, not because you're going to get something out of it, but because you should be. And then in the room, I think it's somebody who's really connected to the story and the character and really doing their homework before you come to the audition. And if you don't understand the scene that you're auditioning with, do ask the question. And if you can't ask it yourself, have your manager ask, or at least ask the person at the front desk, or at the very worst case scenario that you have to ask when you get in the room, so that you're starting a dialogue that's purposeful communication, so you really understand what it is, because you do want to find the perfect person. But if they don't really understand what the story is that they're telling, then you're not going to be the best storyteller, because in the end the best storyteller always wins. So what is the story we're trying to tell in the scene, and make sure you're really hitting all those high points again. So that's what I look for. And it's nice in that early, again, back in the old days when we were in the room, that just that brief dialogue that you're having with people before, that you're allowing them to see you and who you are, which is also now showing what kind of a transition that you're making to be the character, which is also going to be something else that is going to show your range, that although you are like this in real life, that you could be like this when you're playing
exactly.
the character. And just genuinely nice people, and people who've really done their homework. I mean, it is a little troubling when an actor will go to an audition and they don't know who some of the characters within, a project are that's existing, because you could do the homework. And then if you can't do the homework because maybe it's a new series that you're auditioning for, you do have an opportunity to do research. I mean, now that you
Mhm.
can do research with IMDb and checking trailers and clips of films, research the director, because 9 times out of 10 the director is probably going to be doing something similar, so they're going to be looking for similar type actors. And if they do comedy and drama, and you know that it's a drama or a comedy, make sure you really research some of that work. I certainly do it. If I know I'm going to be working on a project, I'm going to watch as much of the work by that director and see what it is that they're looking for, so I can provide exactly what it is that they're looking for. But I also love to throw in women and minorities that maybe the role wasn't written for them, just to showcase something new and
Yeah.
interesting as well.
No, that's a fantastic. I appreciate that, and that actually bounces perfectly into the next question. Why do women need to be profitable? I mean, obviously, it's good to be profitable when you're in any type of industry, right? But why is it so important for a woman to, especially as the director, to be a profitable movie?
Now it's so important because in the end of the day, the business is a business. While it's very creative and we're telling stories, there unfortunately is an expected outcome, which is profit.
Yeah.
So if you are not being profitable, it's highly unlikely, which just makes perfect business sense, that you're going to be continually given money, or in the independent arena, go back to your investors to ask for money if you're not making money back. So it's why studio heads are very specific about the projects that they pick, because they have responsibility to the studio to make money to run that machine, which is much bigger than an independent movie machine. But both of them are machines and they still need fuel in them, and you need money to put the fuel into them. So I think it's really important for women to do it, to show that the stories we are telling are also valuable in making money. So you do need to, push the envelope on stories that women want to hear,
Mhm.
but you need to make sure there's enough of a through line with that, that it is going to be profitable and marketable. Because 2 or 3 films that don't make money, it's going to be very difficult for you to justify, oh, but my next one is going to make money.
Right.
So I thought it was very important to go out of the gates with something that, again, all of it's risky and none of it is foolproof, but it's highly likely that a Christmas film is going to, at the very least, over time, make its money. Whereas another film is going to have that box office weekend and may not have the luxury of replay that a holiday film would.
Right, exactly. That's so true. I love that. I think that's just a very smart, smart approach. And I appreciate you sharing the ins and outs of the business, Kimberly. Do you have any last things that you'd like to impart to the audience?
Well, 2 things. First, show up and follow up. Show up anywhere you can to actually meet people. And it's through meeting the people that you're going to start to build a tribe of interesting people and your band of merry players that you can, forge ahead in this business together. But also follow up. Like I find that I'll receive emails from people and then they don't follow up because they think, oh, she's too busy. I don't want to interrupt her. And I know I used to think that too. However, it's 9 times out of 10, it's easier to return an email than send one. So after you receive the same email from a person a couple of times, you go, oh my, there's 3 emails there I haven't returned. Let me get back to this person because
Right.
just get busy. And now with junk mail, things go into your junk mail. So just assume that somebody has not had a chance to respond as opposed to they are not responding. And I think with actors, very much, there can be the inclination, oh, they didn't want to respond to me. But I implore you then on Follow Up Fridays, just send that email following up on my first email. And then it gives people an opportunity to just follow up when they see that. So it's not you saying, I never heard back from you, because I've received those emails before too. I never heard back from you. I guess you don't want to fill in the blank on whatever. Right back and say, no, that's not the case. I'm terribly sorry. You weren't very clear in your first email that you needed a response from me or you had something for me to do for you. I said, so you have to be specific and clear and just follow up, assuming that somebody did to follow up.
Yeah, it's so true. I've seen so many emails where I don't even mean to ignore them. You get so many every day, and so many of them are junk, like 50% of them are. And so it just happens and you get busy and exactly, it just kind of goes out of sight, out of mind, right?
Second is just tenacity, wherewithal, persistence, but love what you're doing. If at any point you don't love it anymore, I think you could probably find something better to do. I mean, I still get excited. I still love my job after 30 years. And it's not to say it's not difficult. It's not to say there hasn't been hard times. This is not a business for the faint of heart, but I do love that I'm getting other people jobs. I am telling great stories that are socially relevant and are going to change people's lives. And love bringing joy to
Yeah.
people through storytelling. So it's educating under the guise of entertainment. What could be better? So you just have to be persistent about it. And I once, had someone say to me, I'm like, well, at such and such time, if such doesn't happen, then I don't think I'm going to do it anymore. And they said, yeah, but what if you did it 1 year longer, then that was the time it happened. I thought, you know what? You're right. You can't just put an expiration date on it because we all need to do things to evolve the skills and abilities to be better at whatever it is that we want to do. I am a much better director now than I ever would have been if I started doing it before because I understand so much more of the business. I knew when I was diving into it that I had learned I need to be profitable. I need to pick a genre that's going to be profitable. And I need to also pick a genre that's going to be profitable. What I didn't talk about is that because it's a romantic comedy that takes place during the holidays and isn't really about Christmas, Christmas is creating the urgency in it. It will also translate well overseas. And I learned that through discussions with my distributor that as we discussed how do we market this film, it was really playing the romantic comedy in other countries, and we can play up the Christmas elements in this country for screening during the holidays. So, you have to be very strategic about it, but all of that comes from learning, and you can't possibly know everything. I mean, there are studies. You have to do 10,000 hours of something to be good at it. So put in the 10,000 hours and maybe a 10,000 more. So you have to be curious and just love what you're doing and be persistent about it.
Yeah, that's wonderful words of wisdom, especially for the overseas markets, because I don't think a lot of people, when they're making a movie, think about that. How well is it going to translate? Because a lot of the overseas markets are some of the biggest ones, and if you miss out on that, your film could more than likely flop. And I had one last question for you, but what are some things that you would say are red flags in the business? Things to watch out for, maybe people to watch out for. I know you can't say like people and specific those names, but things to watch out for as far as red flags. Because I know in Hollywood, it's that mindset, or in the media industry and entertainment industry, it's the mindset of, oh, I'll do anything it takes. I'll do anything it takes. And it's not always a safe thing to be that way, or have that mindset. So what are some things that are just a few like red flags that you would warn others to be
Well,
careful
I think the first one, particularly, there's a large female audience. You really have to follow your intuition. So if you get a bad feeling, because I think sometimes as women that we might have these feelings, but then because it maybe felt like you were being too judgmental or you weren't being kind, that you don't listen to your instincts. So I think you have to listen to your instincts, and if it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't going to be right. So that's with people that you're collaborating, and even if you're pretty far down a path with someone, once it starts to not feel right, it probably isn't going to play out right. So it's better to cut your losses and leave early than it is to get way deep into something that you really can't, after the fact, get out of. So I think you have to follow your instincts, and that you should always see yourself in the driver's seat, whatever it is. And yes, there may be people who are have seniority over you, but again, you are in charge of your career and what you're doing. So don't compromise your beliefs to get ahead. Because I think it's a business where people feel like, well, if I just do, then I'll get ahead. And I think slow and steady wins the race. And that's also under the premise that everything you should get, you will get. So I would just say stay the course, stay true to yourself, follow your instincts, and really just surround yourself with people that you're going to be spending a long time with. Now, the good fortune is too that after 2 or 3 years on a project, because sometimes they can take that long, or in the case of Dallas Buyers Club and Brokeback Mountain and a few very successful films, it took them 10 years to make them, because you have people who are on, then people who are off, and people's schedules change. That projects are over, and then you don't have to work with those people again. So you start cultivating the people you want to continue to work with, and it is absolutely fine to then move on to the next project and not hire people again. So be true to yourself, trust your instincts, and know that if it doesn't quite work out, the project will eventually end and you can move on to the next one. Of it. It's not a commitment you're signing up for 10 years, but maybe for 10 or 12 months or 2 years of your life, and you can move on to something else.
I love that. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for being on and sharing your wisdom with everybody, just taking the time. I know it's so busy right now with all the projects you've got going on, so very much appreciate your time.
Well, fortunately, I do feel it's my duty to share. So I've been on this planet to inspire others to over deliver. So I'm happy to do that in between all of my work.
So awesome. And you guys, where can people find you that you want them to find you, I guess?
Well, as I was chatting before we came on camera, that if you Google, you can find lots of stuff. I didn't even realize there was stuff online because I still haven't Googled myself. But a great way to track and follow what I'm doing is on Instagram. I was an early adapter to Instagram. I've probably been on since 2007. So direct messages and IG are always great. But I do have also, there's my personal Facebook page, which is just Kimberly Skyrme. Everything's pretty standard. Kimberly Skyrme on LinkedIn, Kimberly Skyrme on Instagram, Kimberly Skyrme on Facebook. But there is a Kimberly Skyrme casting Facebook group. So I do post castings there. And then there's also Kimberly Skyrme Creative Series, because I was doing some creative teaching and having other folks teach and myself teach. So I post things there as well.
Perfect.
So like Instagram is a great way. And I do have Kimberly Skyrme Creative as my website, and you can send emails through that also.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kimberly. Appreciate all your time. And I know the audience is very lucky to have gotten to listen to you for this long. So thank you so much. And hope that everything goes well with your projects and have a wonderful holiday season.
We'll have to do updates over time on the Christmas in New England,
Yes.
and Genome and Unorthodox. I'm co-directing with a friend. So I have lots of things coming up.
I would love
Many
that.
things.
That would be
And happy holidays to everyone.
awesome, guys. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and sign out here. Have a good rest of your day and happy holidays, everyone.